The movie begins by showing us an overhead view of a forest. In the forest, we see a man crawling. He is bleeding and soon stops crawling. We have a look at another man driving a quad bike in the same forest. He drives until he arrives at a cabin. Inside it, he hugs a woman, who says it's very good to see him. He is Kyle, returning those words to her. The name of the woman is Sophie, who asks where his girlfriend, Leah, is. Kyle replies that she couldn't come. Sophie introduces him to her fiancé, Nolan. He says he has heard Kyle is a great hunter. The next scene has Kyle demonstrating his hunting skills by shooting arrows with a bow. He talks about the arrows briefly with Nolan before he instructs him on how to use the bow. Sophie sees him miss his shot and laughs. She says it's nice to see him not being great at everything. Once she uses the bow, she hits the target, but it's quite far from the bullseye. As she is walking away, Kyle approaches her to say she used to do that in their youth. What he means is that she tried to make him feel better, yet she replies she doesn't know what he's talking about. Kyle tells Nolan he does not know why he's teaching him, because it should be done by Sophie. Nolan says if she teaches him to hunt, she will think she's responsible for everything he takes the life of. She tells him she is done with all that, and she is a vegan. Seeing how bad Nolan continues to be with the bow, Kyle wants to shift to shooting guns. Thus they start doing that with beer bottles. This is something at which Nolan fares somewhat better. Later, the trio is inside. We learn Nolan is an editor-in-chief who claims to never be on vacation. Sophie wants him to dance with her and asks what is more important than that. When he says it's writing the article he's writing, she firmly says it's the wrong answer. Afterward, Kyle tells her that Nolan was good today. They are playing cards and Kyle is convinced she has the winning hand, hence she wants them to show each other their cards. Once he does, she says he would have won, but she refuses to show her cards. He tries to take them from her, prompting Sophie to shuffle them with the others to prevent it. She enters the bedroom where Nolan is busy writing. He says if she had taken him out at the time they first got here, he would have written this 3 days ago. Sophie stresses it would not have made a difference, for it takes years to learn how to use a bow. Changing the topic, he asks where Kyle's girlfriend is. Sophie doesn't know. He adds that without Leah, it's a very different weekend. He wants her to know what he means by this. We see Kyle in the other room, hearing this conversation in a muffled way. Sophie tells her fiancé he has a lot in common with Kyle. However, he says she is what they have in common. This conversation quickly becomes an argument. At a different time, Nolan tells her he's sorry, but she doesn't respond to him. Instead, she says to Kyle that she's disappointed that Leah couldn't arrive, as she was looking forward to getting to know her. At this point, Kyle reveals his relationship with Leah is over. He is sad that things never work out for him. He does not know why he didn't say this to Sophie earlier. Seeing this, she says she is there for him if he wants to talk about it. During dinner, Sophie shares her experience of the last time she went hunting. She saw a deer and something in its eyes made her incapable of shooting it. She is now done with hunting. We learn Nolan has agreed to hunt this weekend, due to not wanting to be a hypocrite who eats bacon, yet doesn't have the guts to take a pig's life. Kyle asks what he knows about hunting, to which Nolan replies, he knows it's part of nature. He adds that nature is ruthless and scary. Kyle says society has all its rules, but in nature, what one sees is what one gets. Sophie shares the wisdom of her father. He used to say nature has a way of showing people who they truly are. We learn that Kyle lives 30 miles west of this cabin. He checks on it when Sophie isn't there. Their conversation segues into making choices. Nolan says choices shape a person's life and determine their happiness. He thought he would always be a bachelor, yet meeting Sophie changed that. He had no choice with her. Kyle says they aren't married, causing Sophie to happily say they are engaged. Although Kyle congratulates them, we feel he isn't happy to hear it. Sophie is washing the dishes, and her friend notices she doesn't have an engagement ring on her finger. He mockingly asks if her fiancé, the editor, didn't buy her a diamond ring. Hearing this, she shows him the ring on a shelf. He reminds her that long ago they said something about if they weren't engaged by age 40, but he doesn't finish his sentence. She forgets about that and says they were 12. Becoming more serious, Kyle asks how well she knows Nolan. She says they have been dating for 1 year, another thing he mocks her for. He thinks it's too quick for marriage. Sophie concludes the conversation by saying she's going with her gut. Later, Nolan drinks cognac with Kyle. The former presents a toast to Sophie. He says he thought about asking for Kyle's permission to propose to her, because they have been strong friends for a long time. He also says he could not be just friends with an attractive girl, like Kyle was with Sophie in their youth. Furthermore, he knows Kyle engaged in intimacy with her. This subject brings discomfort to Kyle. He says they don't need to talk about that. Nolan tells him not to worry about it, and Sophie tells him it was a mistake. Coming to his fiancée in bed, Nolan intimately asks her if she knows what the best part of him is. She smilingly says it's her, which he agrees with. He apologizes for being rude earlier. Once he says he's sorry for additionally being rude to Kyle a moment ago, she questions what he means. She says he is like a brother to her, a statement he doesn't agree with internally. He reminds her of what she engaged in with him, hence he can't be like a brother to her. Sophie defends herself by saying they were 18 drunk, and it was a mistake. Soon she says there is something Kyle doesn't know. In the morning, the guys are getting ready to enter the forest. Sophie tells Kyle it's going to be great. She puts one bullet in his shirt pocket, saying her dad used to give her one every time she went hunting without him. The duo gets on Kyle's quad and rides into the forest. Arriving at a certain location, they start walking. While they sit, Nolan asks how far north they are. Kyle shines a light on the man's incompetence by saying they are heading west, not north. Changing the topic, Nolan says he's sorry about last night. He blames the cognac for what he said. As they keep walking, Kyle points his bow at a deer in a short time, but he lowers it to advise Nolan to shoot it with a gun. Nolan aims the rifle at the animal, and it doesn't take long for him to say he can't do it, maybe out of emotions. This prompts the expert hunter to fire an arrow from a respectable distance, hitting the deer. They come to it and Kyle shoots a second arrow into the deer. With that, he removes the arrows. Alas, Nolan tells him the animal is still alive. Subsequently, Kyle hears a sound in the distance. He looks with concern in that direction before he takes the rifle from Nolan, like he knows exactly what the danger could be. After Kyle fires in the direction of the sound, Nolan becomes scared. He says they should probably go back. However, Kyle follows the bloody trail of whatever animal he shot. Nolan repeats he thinks they should go back, and Kyle rudely tells him to be silent. When they return to the deer that Kyle didn't finish off, the duo nervously watches as a wolf steps in to complete the job. Nolan is particularly scared. Whispering, he asks Kyle what they should do. Kyle advises him not to move. As he is slowly trying to equip his rifle, the wolf shows Kyle his teeth. Our attention is brought to Kyle having difficulty getting his rifle because the bow is in its way. Nolan can't handle the tense moment anymore. He quickly tries to take one of Kyle's weapons. It proves to be an awful decision, for the wolf instantly charges and jumps on Nolan to give him hell. During this moment, Kyle tries to shoot the beast, but the rifle is out of ammo. Once he loads the gun, he sees more wolves running around them. Kyle crouches to fire at the wolf attacking Nolan, causing it to flee with the others. Now that the wolves are gone, Kyle draws near his severely injured partner and points the rifle at him. Nolan tells him not to do it. Although he doesn't shoot him, he abandons Nolan lying on the ground in such a state. He runs back to his quad to drive. We see a helmet fall from the back seat that he does not seem to notice. Arriving at the cabin, he has to collect himself due to what he has experienced. He is in shock, removing his helmet. The first thing he does upon entering the cabin is drink wine straight from the bottle. He yells out to Sophie and she awakens in bed. Approaching him, she gets told he missed shooting a deer before they got attacked by wolves. He also says he tried to help Nolan, yet there was nothing he could have done. She demands to know if he's still alive, and it takes some time for Kyle to answer. He does not know. Hearing this makes Sophie put on her hunting gear without hesitation. Outside, Kyle says he can't go back there. Sophie doesn't give him a choice. She demands he come with her to show her where Nolan is. Thus he begins to drive, leading the way on his quad whilst she follows him on a motorbike. We switch to Nolan, who is in an injured state, but still manages to stand. He is lucky to have a compass on him that he looks at. Kyle and Sophie arrive at the deer Kyle shot earlier. After she inspects it, she wants to know why he lied to her about having missed the deer. She can't understand why he would do that. Moreover, she sees he left no weapons for Nolan to defend himself with. He kept the rifle for himself. Kyle asks if she's accusing him of something. She wonders if she should. As she walks away, he dares to say that Nolan is not the one for her. Shocked, she slowly walks to him and asks the man to repeat his audacious words. Once he does, she punches him before driving away. Kyle gets seized by his emotions. Shifting to Nolan, he struggles to walk. When he falls to crawl, we are reminded of the opening scene of the film. Soon, he loses consciousness. Back to Kyle, he puts on his helmet and screams in frustration. While he drives his quad, he notices it has no fuel, prompting him to stop. Dismounting the vehicle, he removes his helmet in fear. He does not want to experience what he witnessed happen to Nolan. Kyle tries to refuel the quad from a gas can, but the sound of a wolf growling nearby scares him into dropping it. He takes his rifle and runs to a tree, where he attempts to load the gun. Today certainly isn't his day because he has no more ammo, but he still has his bow that he equips. Due to the close howling of the wolves, the moment is so tense that it can be cut with a blade. Suddenly a wolf appears, and he aims his bow at it. Focusing on Sophie, she keeps driving until she almost drives into her unconscious fiancé. She is therefore forced to swerve, which results in her slamming into a tree. This causes her to fly off her motorbike. The contact with the ground brings a loss of consciousness. In the meantime, Kyle misses a wolf with an arrow, allowing the fierce animal to bite his leg. Its friend arrives to bite Kyle's arm and neck. Luckily, the hunter has a knife he uses to stab the wolf, delivering the worst injury to it. Both wolves run away, but quickly return to run in circles around him. He takes out the one bullet Sophie put in his shirt pocket. He collects his rifle to load it. Seeing both wolves charging at him, he fires the gun. However, the scene cuts for us to wonder what happens. Switching to Sophie, she regains consciousness and sees the wolves nearby. Once she sees one of them very close, she drops the bow to ready her knife. As the wolf jumps on her, she stabs it, yet the animal's force makes her roll downhill with frightening speed. The roll turns out to be perhaps more brutal than her flying off the motorbike, for her right hand becomes dislocated. Hence, she struggles to crawl uphill. She yells for Nolan to say something. Climbing up, she sees the wolf she stabbed is deceased. Sophie keeps walking and hears the growling of wolves. She slowly turns around to see one of them. This time, she drops her knife to go for the one arrow she has. Alas, she is reminded of her right hand being dislocated. Thus, in such a highly tense moment, she prioritizes getting her hand back into its proper place. She has to slowly get on the ground to do it. A tear rolls down her face because she knows she could easily perish if the wolf decides to take action. After she manages to fix her hand, she takes out the arrow to aim it with the bow. She releases it, but misses. The wolf jumps on her to bring the lady down. Thankfully, she collects her knife and stabs it. This one doesn't perish though, it simply jumps off her, but it comes back, prompting her to yell for it to get out. Having experienced her strength, the wolf obeys her. She finds Nolan lying on the ground. She lifts him to help the man walk. As they cover the ground, she spots Kyle sitting behind the tree he was at. She draws near to see how ravaged her childhood friend is. He did not win the battle with the wolves. Sophie starts to cry seeing him like this. Yet he did get what he gave to the innocent deer. It's like nature told him if he attacks the innocent, he will learn what it's like to receive it. Sophie tells Nolan they have to return for Kyle. Ending their harsh ordeal, the engaged couple finds Kyle's quad and fills it with the gas the deceased man failed to fill it with. Sophie drives with Nolan sitting behind her. Both are very injured, but alive.